Good morning, gentlemen. And Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. One of my boys said, I didn't realize that the English government, the British government was pro-Zionist. So I said, because they gave us a bank holiday to celebrate Yom Yerushalayim.
You said halavai.
Halavai, exactly. Halavai. So it's really so wonderful to come together. I've been having a little bit of trouble uploading some of the videos, and I will keep trying to, and I know people listen to them. While I was trying to upload them, this is session number 12, which is amazing to think about. And what happens when you turn 12, for the ladies anyway? You celebrate a bat mitzvah. So I've got presents for everyone today. But one of the messages we'll share nearer the end, but I'll share again now, which is something from Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg, who was the inspiration behind this. I hadn't actually heard it, but my sister told me that he talks about this idea of you are where you're meant to be. And maybe the reason the videos aren't uploading is one of our very keen members who listens to them but doesn't normally come is here today. So maybe that's why there was a bit of a build-up of all the sessions. So she decided she's got to come and hear it in person. But we will keep going with them, and hopefully the computer will cooperate, because that's always the challenge. So today our learning should be as a merit for Refuah Shalema for Uriah ben Shulamit. We will be thinking of him and having him in mind. Just to share some lovely feedback and some very powerful ideas that people shared with me. And please, as I always say, keep them coming, because the more messages and emails that I get, the more there is to share with the group, and that's where we learn the most from. And one of our wonderful Emunahs came up with a great idea, which is that we should compile them into a book. So if anyone has some free time to help me with that, I think it would be really powerful to share some of those. Yeah.
Melanie's got loads to do.
Yeah, actually.
No.
You stepped down from EGB, so we need to. Perfect. Okay, so
I'll help you.
Okay, hi, thank you for this morning. It was really interesting. You suggested that during our day, we should look out for things which we should be thankful to God for. On Friday, we were called to the hospital to see my sister's daughter, who has been ill for many, many years, and now at 49 has come to the end of the line. The whole thing was incredibly distressing until we met up with what I can only describe as two absolute angels. These nurses were responsible for the end-of-life process for this lady. They were so kind and understanding and were able to explain it all to us. Maybe they were real angels, maybe not, but to me, they certainly were. Sorry to start with quite a heavy message, but I think that the power to be with someone at the end of their life and to make that journey something that is comforting and meaningful is incredible. I might have shared before, but I've done an end-of-life doula course, which is the idea of being with someone at the end of their life. And it's really interesting, because when you tell people of that name, they always say a doula is someone who helps a baby be born. But actually, it's the same process. It's the same. It's accompanying someone from one world to the next. And I think if we have that, if we can hold that, and if we can have that in mind, then it's actually a beautiful journey if you can help them. And any of us who've been with someone at the end of their life, you often can see, I think it's actually like labor in reverse, but you do see a very, very similar pattern. And I think the Medrash of the Gemara brings down an idea of a twin in its mother's womb, and the twins looking and seeing, what's going on, and suddenly there's lots of movement and there's lots of tension, and it seems like there's a lot of very, very frightening things going on. And then his twin brother isn't there anymore. And for this twin left in the womb, it looks like the end of the world, right? It looks like the world has come to an end. But on the other side, everyone's shouting Mazel Tov, right? And I think that whenever any of us have have lost. For those of us left here, it does feel like a very difficult, sad, lonely place. But to remember that on the other side, they're saying Mazel Tov. They're welcoming the person into the next world. I think it's a really beautiful way. And actually, a doula is a perfect name for someone who's accompanying someone to the next stage of their life. So I recognize that this sort of understanding is very intricately connected to faith, because one of our big tenets of faith is the idea that there is another world, and that we are a soul and a body, and that when our soul leaves our body, it is going to a better place, and that it's going to be closer to God, and it's going to be close to family members who passed on, and they're going to be there greeting us and accompanying us. I sometimes think the image we have in our mind is from Fiddler on the Roof, which is probably not the most accurate of like what the angels sitting up there in the, well, not the angels, the family relatives in their white, you know, shrouds, Yom Tov dresses kind of thing, waiting at the Shabbat table. But maybe there's something to that. But it is definitely a very powerful image for us to hold on to. Someone shared with me a Facebook post actually that Hillel Fuld, which some of you may have remembered, came to our community and once for Shabbat UK. His brother Ari Fuld was killed in Israel. But I'm going to share with you this unbelievable post that he wrote. Okay, listen, stop reading here unless you want to be inspired and get chills throughout your entire body. Still here? Everyone okay? I just got this message on LinkedIn. I was asked to keep the person anonymous, but I am passing this message. I'm pasting this message below. Sit down for this. Okay, here goes. Please keep anonymous. Hi, I couldn't message you on Facebook, so trying you here. Apologies this is so long, but please read until the end. I think it is important for people to know how much their words impact and change people's lives. So I want to share with you how you have changed mine. What seems like a few months back, you wrote a Facebook post about your faith and how you see God in everyday life. I read the post, admired how you think, and then went about my day. For whatever reason, I couldn't get out of my head what you wrote. I had long since lost my faith. A particularly difficult tour of Afghanistan was the end of my relationship with my Jewish faith. As I kept thinking about your post and reread it and thought I would do the same. Just for one day, I'm going to look at every experience and event in the day as you do. I never would have imagined the events that followed. So I woke up as normal, and as I entered my living room, the sun was beaming through. This is always my favorite part of the morning. But this morning, it made me smile a little, more than normal. Good start, Hashem. Well played. But then, as I was heading to work, there was a spill of chemicals on the road, and all traffic was rerouted. As the traffic built up, I was late for work, and the morning seemed to be turning into a disaster. After what was a very normal and average day, I packed up my things and turned my phone on to check if the roads were clear. Erg. My main road was closed, and my other option was backed up due to the diversion. I looked on the map, and there was a back road I could take through some small villages. I jumped in my car and followed the sat-nav. While driving through one of the villages, there was an elderly man who looked like he had fallen. I stopped and pulled over to see if he needed any help. He had a significant cut on his head, so I got out my first aid kit and blanket to help as much as I could. I called his daughter, who was in a panic state. She walked over an hour away, but I said I would wait with him until either the ambulance or she arrived. So as we sat together, we got talking, and he was telling me all about his life when he was in the Navy. I stated that I had served in our armed forces, and we exchanged stories of our time. We then got on to talking about family, and he became a little withdrawn. He went on to say that his grandson had been in the army, but sadly lost his life while serving in Afghanistan. He then proudly got out a picture of his grandson. My heart sank. I was the team medic on the patrol when he lost his life. I was the one that had failed this man's grandson. This had been the event where I had said my last prayer and my faith was lost. We sat there in silence for a moment and then the ambulance arrived. We said our goodbyes and I went on home. Thinking about the day, I decided I would leave my mind and heart just that little further open than I had previously for Hashem to shine through. But to be honest, I was more confused than ever. About a week later, I got a phone call. It was the gentleman's daughter wanting to say thank you and invite me for a drink with the family. This is not something I would normally do, but I remembered your words and thought maybe there is something in them and this all happening for a reason. So as we sat down with a pint on a beautiful warm afternoon, we started once again talking about our time that we had served in the military. I questioned if I should mention that I was there with their grandson in his last moments, but I decided I should. Once I had finished telling them I was there and that I had prayed over their son, his mother said she had recognized me from a pre-deployment picture she has in her house that has me and her son in it. She asked me what I had said to him. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. She then stated that her heart was healed, knowing he heard these words, and took out her necklace. On it, a Star of David pendant. I went home with what felt like a massive weight lifted off my shoulders. The next day, I felt just different, but in a good way. After a little pondering, I called the small synagogue that is nearest to me. There is only one. I inquired about their services, and for the first time in 10 years, I went. Although I am still early on my journey of rediscovering my faith, I know that Hashem is with me through it, every step, every smile, and every tear. I always say a prayer for you as a thank you, as I would not be in the place I am now without your words. Your simple Facebook post has changed the life of a random stranger and healed a grieving family. He truly does work in mysterious ways. Thank you. And Hillel says, I'm still catching my breath from this message. I mean, we don't even know what his message said. You know, it could have just said, have faith. Like it wasn't about that. But the words that we say and the power that we have, the comfort that this person gained and the comfort he gave the family, not knowing that they were even a Jewish family, is unbelievable. We never know. You never know. Okay. It seems like there's a lot of sad posts this morning, so forgive me. I'm just going to share the last one, which is about Sila Gez, who was the young mother who was killed in Israel over the week. This beautiful lady on the way to give birth to her son. So some of you might have seen this already, but I found it very powerful. After the tragic murder of Sila Gez, her husband named their newborn Ravid Chaim. A name Sila had chosen for herself was Ravid, with Chaim added in hope and merit that the baby would survive. In an incredible turn of events, the commander of the unit that eliminated the terrorists responsible later arrived. That's this guy who eliminated the unit. And his name? Ravid Chaim. Yeah, the same name that they gave the baby. But wait, there's more. The owner of the Kikar HaShabbat supermarket chain was deeply moved by what happened, shaken by the idea that a woman could go out to give birth and never return. Determined to help, he decided to adopt the family and provide them with groceries for life, with free groceries for life. His name, Eyal Ravid, son of Chaim Ravid. There's no such thing as coincidence. Even amongst the pain, when we can see Hashem's hand, it's so, so powerful. So I'm sorry that it's a heavy start to our morning together, but that's sometimes when the messages come in, you know, I feel like Hashem puts certain messages we need to hear. It's a heavy time for all of us at the moment. As you know, this evening, we're going to have a conversation together talking about what's going on and supporting each other at 6 in the Shul for anyone who needs, but it's really about a supportive space. But that's what we come together every week actually to do, to be able to support each other And as we said from the beginning, it's not about when everything works out perfectly, then we can see Hashem's hand. Sometimes it's when we're in the pain that we're trying to find Hashem's hand, desperately trying to, and to see the comfort in it. So as today's Yom Yerushalayim, I was just listening to someone sharing some ideas about what was going on at that time in '67. And he shared some words from Menachem Begin, who came to the Kotel and came to be part of it and was just blown away by it. But I think one of the things that resonated with me or resonated with the times that we're going through is the fact that Begin had lost his family to the Holocaust, right? He was a survivor. We're not talking about, sometimes we forget that the people who were responsible for fighting for our state and fighting to make sure that we had this homeland, he'd gone through so much. And one of the things that they were singing at the Kotel, which is actually what the reason that Shul ran a bit longer this morning, because they were singing Hallel in Shul. And I want to share with you what one of the lines is that we sing in Hallel, because it's so powerful. The Hebrew is Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. How amazing to be able to come to a day where Hashem gave us all the ability to go and visit the Western Wall. You know, I've never known a world where you can't just go to the Kotel whenever you fancy. And sometimes when you go to Israel, it's like, oh, I don't know, we're going to have time to get to Jerusalem. We're going to have time, even when we're in Jerusalem, do we have time to get there? It's so easy. And then when I hear from people who remember what it was like going to the Western Wall when you couldn't access it so easily. One of the most powerful stories, and I know she'll be happy for me to share, is Wendy Pater shared with me when she was a little girl that she went to visit an aunt who lived in the old city, like just overlooking where the Kotel was. And she came into her flat and she went out onto the Mirpesa, and there was a little brick that you would remove from the wall, and they gave you a step to step up through, and through that they say, look, there's the Kotel. Like to me,
parents, they went on a honeymoon. The first time they went abroad, they went to Israel, and they went to Jerusalem, and they were like very naive, they were young, 20, like only 20, I think. And they said they got to where you could get to, and then you stood up high and looked over in the distance to see the Kotel.
right?
They got so burned, they weren't used to being in that.
Yeah.
They'd never been abroad. They just stood there, they were mesmerised, but looking from
So
far,
far, yeah.
and to actually for us now to
It's like
go and-
unreal that we can. Yeah, does anyone here remember going to Israel? And yeah. Oh.
I went in 1965, and my uncle used to get there was a hospital. It was the wrong side, and he used to go and place the places, sort of to roundabout gates. And I remember looking across, and I went to 1967 when I had hotel back, but it was rubble around there. It was very narrow, not the straight plaza. Yeah, and it's just the most amazing. And I feel like whatever it is, wherever we go into,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there's something about it.
Amazing. Yeah.
We went to Israel in July '67, just after the 6th war. There was a special.
Was that your first time there?
Yes,
Amazing.
I was watching the special thing that was going from Glasgow to a Shul organised it. And we went there, and it was very, very different. You smelled the meat, so it hadn't changed in centuries, except for what is from Hong Kong. It was built up around it. I suppose I didn't realise how special that was. There were hardly any waiters, they were all in the army. And yeah, it's a very big memory.
Amazing.
I mean, I remember going in 1971, my parents on a tour and going to the wall. And every time I go to Israel, I cannot. I mean, I have to go to Jerusalem, I have to go to the wall. But yeah.
It's like going home. There's something about being there. Amazing.
I read something today on Facebook. This year's Yom Yerushalayim is extra special because it's 58 years since we got Jerusalem back, and there's 58 hostages we're waiting to get back. So today is the day to do the extra, give an extra prayer that we get the 58 hostages back on the anniversary of 58 years.
It's very special. It's very special. I think I heard as well, because Yom Ha'atzmaut was quite challenging because of the fires. They couldn't really celebrate properly. This feels like we need to, and this is what we hold as the Jewish people, like that we're struggling and we're celebrating at the same time. You know, and like King Shlomo HaMelech says, like there's a time to mourn and a time to dance. That's what we're constantly juggling this. And I think that's what Begin was really saying, you know, that we're going to celebrate and we're going to talk about how wonderful it is. And we're still holding, you know, the pain and the loss and the worry all at the same time, all together. That's what we do as Jews. What we do. Okay. So, Jerusalem, our home. When we talk about returning to Jerusalem, what does that really mean? How many of us have had the discussion? Should we just pick everything up and go? Yeah, but right? We went out with someone in the community who's 90, and their kids were there as well, and he was saying, just leave. It's time to go to Israel. I know right now it's hard, right? We're at war, but are we safer here? Is it better here? I don't know. These are all really big questions, and I think these are questions where we need to really pull on our faith and pull on, what do we really mean when we say that next year we want to be in Jerusalem, right? What did the people who gave up their lives to give us that kotel, right? Yom Yerushalayim, what we're celebrating, and the struggles that have come since then. In our weekly prayers, every single day, 3 times a day, we say, Yerushalayim ircha barachamim tashuv. To Jerusalem, your city, may you return in compassion, and may you dwell in it as you promised. May you rebuild it rapidly in your days as an everlasting structure, and instill within it soon the throne of David. Blessed are you, Lord, who rebuilds Jerusalem. To me, part of faith means realizing that actually the time when it's going to be okay in Israel, in Jerusalem, where there's going to stop being constant fighting, constant struggles, is at that point where Hashem returns us to Jerusalem in compassion. And we can have lots of debates about whether that process started post 48, post 67, etc. You know, there's definitely, we showed yet last week this idea of we're up to the table, right? If that's the beginning of history and this is Mashiach, we're here, as Rav Rimon said, we're right here. We've nearly made it. And in terms of Israel, like the proof of our faith, the fact that we have our country, the fact that we have Jerusalem, the fact that I've only ever known that, of course, you can go to the Kotel. I say that, but actually I was in Sem in Israel in 2001 when there were a lot of bus bombings. And in our Sem, we were in Har Nof, which was, I say it was a safer, more kind of, more contained, out of the way place, but unfortunately, as we know, they've had a massacre there as well. So I'm not sure where that kind of place exists. But at the time, we were allowed to stay kind of in Har Nof. And on the notice board in Sem, every day there was a sign, can you or can't you go to the Kotel? This was in 2001, right? That was normal life. And at one point, when I came home for Pesach, my parents said, you're not allowed to go back to Israel. It's too dangerous. And I really, really wanted to go back. So the condition on going back was that I couldn't leave the Neve campus, which is at the top of the hill in Har Nof. That was the agreement between my parents and I. Since then, they've changed. Since then, they go to Israel a lot more, even though we did always go. But it's very frightening listening to what's going on in Israel from here. And then you go there and you go, oh, it's fine, right? Israel's fine. But it is frightening, right? There are things that happen there. I definitely think that being there is a lot less frightening in some ways. That everyone who's gone, like there's something about just being there, even with the sirens, that it just feels like the place that you're meant to be. But what we're saying here from our prayers is we're saying, Hashem, return us to your city, our city, Jerusalem. Jerusalem is home for all of us, right? Whether we've been or not, Jerusalem is our home. But there's a very key word in the prayer that we say, which is barachamim, with compassion. We know we have to go through this process. We know we need to go through, we said last week, the time towards the time of Mashiach, there's a lot that needs to happen, and there's a lot of challenges and unsettled, but Hashem, give us rachamim, right? Hashem, give us mercy, give us compassion. Return us to Jerusalem with compassion. And then this is a prayer we say, like I said, 3 times a day, every day. And so many of us, if not all of us, have had this conversation. Do we just pick up and move, right? Do we just go, right? How much louder can the messages be? What's going on in this country? I shared with the women who came, we said to Hillel on Shabbat, I shared, I think it's funny, but it's not really funny. There was some louts outside our son's school in Belsize Park, the Hasbro Middle School. The problem is when you've got Jewish mothers on a WhatsApp group, sometimes things get escalated that don't need to. And they said something about knives. There were no knives. They called the police. Everyone got hysterical. You know, like, it's calm down, everyone. It's okay. They're okay. If I asked here how many of you got started on the way to or from school, you know, it happens. I think for our kids, because they're not used to it, it's quite upsetting for people. The school shouldn't have them there. They should be escorted to and from. I think the school's doing their best, but that's generally my policy. I think CST have been amazing. One of our members who's part of CST said they got a message to come, and he asked, do you need me right now? And they're like, no, there aren't any knives. They kind of just blew it up out of proportion. But I asked our son, how did the boys who were inside the school, knowing that something's out, so he sang to me, which I'm not going to sing, but he said, it happens every day, it happens every day. You're nothing special, it happens every day. To me, like, that's Jewish, you know, like these lobbuses, that's their resilience. Like, oh, for goodness sake. And then I said to him, actually, I said, do they still say Free Palestine at you on the trains? He's like, Mum, of course they do, like, whatever. You know, obviously it's heartbreaking. Obviously no Jewish child should be subjected to that. But what amazing resilience our kids have. You know, what amazing resilience we have. You know, when you think about our history and what's happened to us, as you know, when Johnny Daniels came, he shared this idea that we've gone through worse, and we're still here. We will always still be here. That's Hashem's promise to us. We are Am Hanetzach. But I still think this question about, is it right to be here? I have to be honest, since Corbyn, the whole like Corbyn thing ended, I haven't asked that question again till this week. I don't know if anyone else felt this week with the government. I just felt like, are we sure we're meant to still be here? And the honest truth is, we're very blessed. We have an amazing rabbi called Rebbetzen in Israel, whose shoulders we can lean on. And I forgot to actually, I think I'm speaking to him today. I will ask the question again. And when we asked the question originally with Corbyn, and we were told that as long as the government isn't promoting anti-Semitic values, then you stay. So I don't know now where that line is. I think what he's talking about is as long as they're not saying Jews can't sit on those benches and Jews can't go swimming in those places, and it's okay to say. But I'll clarify that, because I think that's important. In terms of us personally, I also feel like we're here on a mission, right? We're very much here on a mission, and we will turn off the lights. That's what we feel like as a family. There's a reason we're doing this, and we will stay here with the community as long as it's the right thing to do. But I definitely felt really unsettled this week. And I definitely was asking those questions, and I asked those questions of all of you. And I know it's hard. You know, we lived in Israel. we could never go to Israel and be a community rabbi unless the whole of Bushy moves there with us, which is what my dad thinks we should do. So don't build a new shul, just take the whole community to an area. Shelby Friedman, some of you will remember from Rosh Hashanah, she's already found us the area near where she is. We'll all move as a community, we'll all live on top of each other in flats and drive each other mad, but it will be Israel and it will be Bushy on Sea, right? We'll go to Israel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, right? But we know there's a lot of reasons. And I think that's why the message I started with at the beginning from Rabbi Ephraim is such a powerful one. And he's made this into like a slogan and he's put it on mugs and t-shirts. And we'll talk a little bit about the merch side of this group, which I think will please God grow. But what his big slogan is, you are where you're meant to be, right? This guy stuck in traffic. On the day he was trying to find Hashem. Come on, God. Seriously? Yes, you made the sunshine, but seriously? You're going to make me divert and late to work and late on the way back and the sat-nav's taking me on this ridiculous route. You are where you're meant to be. And isn't it amazing? It's such a powerful thing. And I'm thinking, okay, so I am where I'm meant to be. How much of my worries and anxieties is about, are we doing the right thing? Are we meant to be here? Where are we meant to go? What are our children meant to do? How are we meant to, what? You are where you're meant to be. Isn't that a powerful, simple statement? But how powerful is that? So when you're having a really bad day, you are where you're meant to be. And when you're having a really good day, you are where you're meant to be. I'd love to open up to anyone here. Think about it.
I find that very comforting.
Go on, Mary.
From the place that I was born in, where we were very happy. And it's a big thing to move after 69 years. For the one place.
Yeah.
But having had our children move and my parents having died and realizing that the Jewish life wasn't really there in a way that we wanted for our children ever, and keeping close to our children, we did move. I suppose I think a lot about our grandparents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents having the courage to move from Eastern Europe because we wouldn't have been here. And it must have been very hard.
And I think what's really difficult about that as well is if we say you are where you're meant to be for your grandparents, but also you are where you're meant to be for my great-grandparents who didn't leave. And I think that's really hard, but actually it's wonderful when you can see that as hard as a move is, you are where you're meant to be.
My story is very similar to Miriam's because we also moved after a very long time and for the same reasons. Our children were here. But one strange thing is that we actually started coming to Bushy because at the time that our children were first having their children and we had grandchildren, one of our sons lived in Bushy. And when we used to stay with him, we used to come to Shul here. And we became very fond of the community then. And this is, going back 20 or 25 years. And when we finally were able to move, and indeed we waited till the last grandparent wasn't there, and we felt we could move, we came to Bushy, although our child had left Bushy, but it was where we felt we were meant to be. And I'm absolutely sure that's where we were meant to be. And it was the right place. And like you, if I could pick up everybody, I would go, but I can't. And so, I'm meant to stay here, I guess.
And I think, if you would have asked your son when he was in Bushy, like, why are you meant to be here? He wouldn't know. But maybe it was just because you were meant to end up here and you needed to come here. Like, you never know why you're meant to be where you're meant to be.
Well, he did say that it was the dead centre of the world.
Right.
And I said, Adam, Bushy is not the centre of the world. He said it is the dead centre.
Lovely. What an accolade, guys. You could tell your friends we live in the dead centre of that. No,
Yeah.
there's a lot of life here in
Yeah.
Bushy, thank God. I remember when we were getting ready to go into the cab to take us to the airport to leave Yerushalayim, to leave Israel. I really genuinely thought this was the worst thing that could possibly happen to our family. I knew that we were going to go. I knew that we were still going to leave. I knew it was something Elkanah really wanted to do. I knew it was important, but I really thought it was the worst thing that we could do. You are where you're meant to be. We needed some musical accompaniment this morning. It's fine. I really genuinely thought, like, you know, the life we had in Israel was unbelievable, and we were leaving that, and I was sobbing. How could we leave? My family, a lot of my family were there. Our friends were there. Our children's education was there, the type of life I wanted for us, and we left. And I think if I could say to myself then, you know, you are where you're meant to be. It's okay. Just you wait, right? Give it a few more years and you're going to love being there. And it's going to be the best thing for your family that you get to raise them in Bushy and that they get to go to schools in England, in London. It's going to be the most amazing thing for your family that you could never know then.
I just think that's just the best phrase I've heard in a very long time, I have to just say. So when I left Edgware to come to Bushy, I didn't even know where Bushy was, which Linda will attest to because I've got no sense of direction. I literally saw a house, found Bushy, didn't even know where Bushy was or existed. And Mark and I were getting married, and I said, I found us the house in Bushy. And I showed, and I didn't know, I knew one person in Bushy. And I just said, this is where we're going to start our new life together in Bushy. Now, it wasn't like I even knew the place. And we started here. And I think now it was the best thing, like, to become part of this community. It's very complicated when you get remarried, when you have a blended family. It's not straightforward at all. But I found strength from the community and from you and advice and everything. And then I think I have, you know, I've really struggled since October the 7th. I found, like everybody else, I found it really hard, but I have had such strength from this community for this entire 20 months, like from the day it happened when I was Asia Khan and it all went horribly wrong. And this, I think, I genuinely do believe this community has got me through it. And if I was still in Edgware, I didn't have an association with Edgware Shul at all. I never ever went. I didn't feel a bond with Edgware. I was there 20 years. I didn't feel anything with Edgware Shul. I don't know what state I would be in as a person. I think I'm a lunatic now, but I would have been a raving lunatic if I was still there without the support of the people, or without the support of all the people. So, and also when I think all I've done with this Shul, I mean, genuinely, I've got more out of it than what I, you know, put into it all. I am where I was meant to be, and who knew? Who even knew where Bushy was? I mean, literally, who knew? And it's changed my life for the better so much, in every single aspect of my life has improved since I've moved to Bushy. So that's the most powerful line.
It's unreal. Again,
Yeah.
if you would say to yourself when you found that house, okay, you're where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
Like, you could never guess what the next few years would be like.
Never.
That's faith, isn't it? That's where you take the leap of faith. You know, that it will be all right. You know, I when we moved, I was really happy we were coming to post the kids, but I was really worried that it wouldn't be what we were expecting it to be. And I didn't want the kids to feel responsible for us. I wanted us to be able to help them and be part of, you know, bigger family. But it is a huge leap of faith, and we do those small leaps all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes
And again, like, if you needed to explain to the you who was there, it's not just like this will all be okay, because sometimes it's challenging. You know, you can move somewhere or you can be somewhere and it's a really hard place to be. You're still meant to be there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was in it for 37 years. We have been here almost a year, on the 29th of May. It was just the best move ever because I'm emotional. That before the I couldn't feel like ever been to this there and various times we at one point two at the same time. It's like that person's first year was just. It was just incredible, and I've never.
Come and join Bushy Gives Back. If you want, if you want to, you're very welcome.
So it's very
No.
it's very interesting because part of our family plans and whatever, it wasn't just because of this, but we were talking about what we're doing over the half term and where we're going to be and all. And in the end, I'm where I'm meant to be. I'm here. I didn't realize coming today was going to be all about how much everyone loves Bushy. So I'm where I'm meant to be. I want to share a story just before we end, and I give you your beautiful going home presents, which I'm so excited about. But some of you might remember, and I can't remember. Oh yeah, I do remember when it was. It was in January 2020. Was the Siyam Hashas, which was Shas is the books of the Gemara, the books of Talmud. And Meir Shapiro, who yes, who many of us, some of us went to visit to his yeshiva in Lublin. He came up with a system that in order to get through all the books of Shas, you learn one page of Gemara every day. It's called Daf Yomi. So my father-in-law's completed it, I don't know how many times, but that's a lot of people come together every day all over the world and they learn the same page of the Gemara, which is very powerful. There's also been women who learn the pages of Gemara, and there was a big Siyam last time there was a Siyam. It takes 7.5 years. So we're probably getting close to the next one, right? Another 2.5 years, something like that, or 2 years probably, and they'll finish the next one. When it was the Siyam Hashas, Elchanan really wanted to go to New York, because in the MetLife Stadium, there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming together to celebrate. Even though he hadn't learned as part of the Daf Yomi, it's an incredible thing to go to. And we were debating backwards and forwards, and we were deciding there were a lot of different things going on. I think maybe there was a wedding that weekend, so he couldn't quite make it. And the flights just became beyond ridiculous to get there, and he made a decision not to go, but with a really heavy heart. So and we all felt it, like it was something I really wanted him to be. I really wanted to go as well, but it really was like an amazing thing to be part of. On the day of the Siyam, or the day before or after, when he should have been abroad, and it's this message of you are where you're meant to be. He got a phone call from a couple. Or he called a couple who just had twins, just to see how they're doing and to find out about the Brits, because he didn't think he would be around, but now he was around. So they really appreciated him calling, and they wanted to know. They really appreciated him calling, but the husband he spoke to, he said, "Do you mind if I ask you a question?" So he said, "Yeah." Oh no, not even. Sorry. Elchanan said to him, "Who's the Moel?" And he said, well, because the twins were born preemie, we looked online and we wanted only to have a registered urologist to do the Brit Milah. And he told Elchanan a name. So Elchanan said, okay. And he hung up the phone and he kind of had this weight like, oh no, who have they found? And he did a bit of research, and they're not a part of the Initiation Society, which means that this doctor isn't accepted by London Beth Din, etc. So Elchanan picks up the phone to Diane Gelly, who's the head of the London Beth Din, and he says to him, what am I meant to do? Is there any way that it can count? Is there any way that, as long as he's doing the Brit Milah, is it okay? And Diane Gelly said, no, you really do need to have a Moel who is God-fearing, who is mitzvah observant, like you have to use the right Moel. And he just didn't know, what does he do now with that information? This poor family, they're planning a Brit. It was 2 days later. What's he meant to do? So he called back up and he said, can I come over? They said, sure. And they came over, and he, with such a heavy heart, he said, I don't know how to tell you this, but the person that you booked as a Moel isn't, it's up to you, obviously, but it's not an accepted person to use, and it could really count as a problem for you. What Dangeli explained to him and the people he spoke to explained to Elchanan was that if someone's going through the steps of making a Brit Milah, that means they care enough to do it properly. They just don't realize that they're not doing something that will be accepted. So like, why would you put your children through that? And before he went to meet them, actually, he did some research and he found out that there was a Moel who was also a doctor who was available, who could come, and he just offered it to them. So he went and he explained this to the couple, and the couple said, yes, definitely. And they said, you know, it was a little bit strange because when we were talking to him about it, we wanted to know if we need to put a kippah. You know, they have those little baby kippahs with a string on. Do we need to put a kippah on the baby? And we asked him that question, and he said, no, but do you want me to wear a kippah? And we thought, that's a bit weird. Listen to this. They called him they called him up and said, we're not going to use him. And obviously this man was very upset because they booked him in, etc. And then when he saw Elchanan on the Sunday, which was when the bris was, he goes, this man kept calling us on Shabbat. He said, I'm not religious, but he's calling us on Shabbat, upset that we're not using him. He's like, that isn't just not on. So you are where you're meant to be. There was so much of me that was sure that Elchanan was meant to be at the Daf Yomi Siyum. Thousands of people. It only happens every 7.5 years. It's such an incredible thing to be part of. But you are where you're meant to be. Those two little boys had a kosher Brit Milah just because Elchanan was where he was meant to be. He wouldn't have made the phone call. They would never have known that the Moel wasn't someone who they should be using. These two little boys would have had a circumcision that doesn't count as a Brit Milah. You are where you're meant to be. Now, speaking of being where you're meant to be, I know that everyone came today because I told you you're getting presents. But this is a gift that Eleanor brought back from us from Israel. Standing Together is an organization I've spoken to you a little bit about, Rabbi Shai Gruber, who goes around giving all the gifts and presents to the hostages and to people who've lost someone from the army and bringing birthday cakes to the little children. And he's just the most unbelievable man. And when Agam Berger, who we started our course because of her, when she was released, just a week later, I think, he made these bracelets, which he's taken her handwriting that she wrote on the whiteboard in the helicopter that says, B'derech Emunah Bacharti, I chose the way of faith. And that was her WhatsApp status before she went into Gaza. I chose the way of faith. And then it says, V'derech Emunah Shavti, and in the way of faith, I returned, right? We've spoken a lot about her. Unbelievable. But I have to tell you the story because obviously it's you are where you're meant to be. Someone from the community went out to Israel and I asked them if they could get the bracelets for us. And they tried, but they weren't in Jerusalem. And it was quite difficult to get these bracelets. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I wrote a message upstairs to the office. Do you want to just pass them around so everyone can take one? I asked the office to try and buy the bracelets for us, and the website, like there was a link and it just didn't work and it couldn't go through, and I didn't know what was happening. So I spoke to my sister-in-law who lives in Israel, who you needed a Taudat Zahut, you needed like an Israeli identification thing. So I spoke to her and she said, don't worry, I'll put it through. So she put the cost through, and then I said to her, will you send me the invoice so that I can pay it? No, don't worry, it's my donation. I want to be part of what you're doing. So these bracelets are donated by my sister-in-law. And then how are we going to get these bracelets? So Eleanor told me she was going to be in Tel Aviv. Now, they're not at Hostage Square. You've got to go to some side road somewhere in Tel Aviv. But she said that they're going to be taking a cab anyway to go volunteering for Leka Israel in Rishon LeZion. So on the way back, actually, they'll go past. And then she told me they literally stopped outside. They didn't even get out of the car. Someone chucked the bag in the cab and off they went. You are where you're meant to be, right? They were meant to be there. That's where they were meant to be. We were meant to get them this week, right? I thought we were going to get them 2 weeks ago. This is our bat mitzvah celebration for our course, right? Session number 12. This is where we're meant to be. This is a bracelet for every one of us that we've chosen the way of faith, inspired by Agam, and inspired by all the all the hostages and so many others. I actually wanted to share with you this week some videos, but I think I wasn't able to set up the technology. We'll try for next week, but the unbelievable, I can't like spam the group with too many videos, but the unbelievable videos that I've been seeing hopefully we'll be able to share them next time. But I want to just end with a story that my sister shared with me. She does listen to, she was the one who told me this, "You are where you're meant to be," from Rabbi Ephraim. And she said that Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg put on his family WhatsApp group, "Does anyone know where the laptop charger is?" And his kids wrote, "It is where it's meant to be." So there you go. You are where you're meant to be. Let's see if we can all walk around this week feeling that we are where we're meant to be, whether that's in England, whether that's in Bushy, whether that's in whatever challenges we're dealing with this week in our lives. Let's try and feel that sense of we are where we're meant to be and support each other through that. Be lovely to see whoever wants to come back this evening. Next week, we will not be meeting because it is Shavuot. Okay, but there's a big full-on Shavuot program, so please do come along. If you're here on Monday, please do come on Monday. There is a barbecue, so we won't have an Emunah share, but there is a barbecue. Book in, because even though you are where you're meant to be, and if you show up, you are where you're meant to be. But poor Stella gets very worried that there's going to be enough food for everyone. So please do book in for there's a dinner on Sunday night that's going to be great fun. There's a barbecue on Monday that, please God, there'll be wonderful weather. And if not, you are where you're meant to be, right? But there should just be enough food, so book in so that we can be in part of it. And a wonderful tikkun on the Sunday evening. And on Tuesday afternoon, there's a ladies' tikkun at 5:30 as well, with Joe Gross is going to be joining us. So lots going on this Shavuot, and our wonderful flower deliverers, which we love. That's going to be happening this week. Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your bank holiday.